In this video, we see how the plugin works. Questionnaires with which you can create surveys or questionnaires, indeed, to send to your clients, for example, to know their level of satisfaction, perhaps during the purchase of our services or products on our company website. First of all, we need to install the Questionnaire plugin in our Framework360 environment. To do this, we go under Plugin Customization and then search for Questionnaires. As we can see, the plugin will open and we can install it with the convenient install button. Click Confirm. Once confirmed, a section called Questionnaires will have opened on the left in the sidebar. Let's access it. Here we just need to add our first questionnaire. By clicking on Add at the top right, an easy screen will open where we can add, for example, the name of the questionnaire. Let's call it, for example, Satisfaction Questionnaire. As we can see, a permalink will also have opened, which we could use to view it and send it to our clients once saved. Now on the right, as we can see, there are some settings, including, for example, the status of the questionnaire. If at some point we want to deactivate it, we can simply uncheck it and the questionnaire will no longer be accessible. Then there will be a section dedicated to scoring if we want to assign a score for each answer, a progress bar if we want to show it, for example, indicating how much is left until the end of the questionnaire. It will be very convenient, as the client will know from the start when the questionnaire will end and thus be more motivated to continue answering. With multiple submissions, we could also decide to allow people to submit the same questionnaire multiple times. By linking a form, in the end, we could select a form or create a new one to link to the questionnaire. For example, if we want that when the number of questions is finished and the client has already answered all of them, they could potentially fill out a contact form or a quote request form or other types of forms. By doing so, along with the responses, we will also receive the data of the potential client to contact. But let's get into the heart of the questionnaire and start adding questions. First, let's create the first section. The first section, for example, could be about the type of services purchased. For example, let's call the section Purchased Services. We can also add a description here if we want the client to see it. And then we start with the questions. The first question could be, which services have you purchased? And here we should decide what type of question it is. For example, we could choose whether to allow the client to write a short answer, so it will be a fairly small section where the client can maybe write a sentence. A long answer, as we can see. A long answer will indeed require a much larger text area, an email address, a phone number, a time, a numerical value, for example. In this case, what services have you purchased? It might require a short open answer, so we click on short answer and move forward. Let's add another question. For example, how long did it take you to purchase? Let's use this example. In this case, we might add a text, a numerical value. This numerical value might relate to entering in the description. Let's write the number of hours you spent before deciding to purchase. We can move forward. Let's add another question. Maybe, in this case, we want to include selectable answers, either multiple choice or single choice. So, if it's multiple choice, multiple answers can be selected. Single choice, only one. For example, let's set it to single choice, and here we can write which operator served you. And here we could add, for instance, the names of all the operators we have in the company. As we can see, in fact, by enabling the Assign a Score section, we will have the option to add a score based on the user's response. With this response, it might not be necessary to assign a score to every answer. However, if, for example, we add another question asking what skills do you have, and then among the single choices, for instance, we can write mechanical, jedante, botto, web, electronics. For example, this could be very useful in the case of a potential candidate looking for a job, for instance, the mechanical skill. We assign 10 points to the mechanical skill, 5 points to the web skill, and maybe 3 points to the electronics skill. By doing so, obviously, we sum up all the scores from the various answers. This will provide us with a sort, it's a filter that we could use, for example, to better select a candidate or a potential client. If, for instance, we offer only a few consulting slots, we move forward. In this case, we create a new section. Let's go back up. Among the steps, then, the first step will be purchased services. The second step, we call it, for example, customer satisfaction. In this case, we might apply conditions that say, for example, based on the score accumulated in the first step, in the previous steps. Anyway, we could display this section, or this section could be displayed based on the customer's responses. In this case, for example, we could set it so that this step opens only if in the previous step To the question of which operator served you, the answer was, for example, Roberto. So, if the answer was that the operator was Roberto, this second step called satisfaction will open. The customer will say, for example, how was your experience with Roberto? In this case, we know because we have obviously set the condition that this step appears only if Roberto served the customer. And obviously here, we could include a short response where the customer can leave a comment, or we can provide options like before: good, so-so, bad. By doing so, we will know if the customer had a good so-so or bad experience with Roberto. We could also add, for example, in this case, a comment on Roberto with a long text response. This way, the customer can provide a very detailed response. Let's write it here as well. As we can see, write a detailed comment about your experience with the operator, Roberto. So maybe we call this with Roberto. This way, we know that this step only appears if the operator was Roberto. Otherwise, the step would be skipped. And maybe here we can avoid applying conditions, but instead insert general questions about overall satisfaction. So general satisfaction with the service. Let's create a question and write, for example, how was your experience? And here we can add, for example, a numerical value, a minimum value of 1, a maximum value of 10. Enter the rating. You would give us from 1 to 10. Of course, we can always add required if we want this response to be mandatory. Among the purchased services, we could also add required questions, like which services you purchased, how much time you spent, and which operator served you. By doing so, all questions are mandatory, and if the customer does not answer, they will not be able to proceed. The last interesting thing we can see in this tutorial is the ability to add very well-designed content, for example, thanks to the descriptive section. Then, Visual Builder. The Visual Builder allows as in pages and emails, to create highly customized content such as a video. And then we can add, for example, a title. We can write something like watch the video, position it in the center, and add a margin. As we can see, it's always possible. Margin, border, or padding. Padding is the internal spacing of the content. The margin is the external spacing. In this case, we want to distance the title from the video, so we set it to 30 pixels. Here we can write watch the video as a question. Let's say, then this section would appear. Let's make it required, and then we add one last thing. Question, would you come back to us, for example, and then we make it selectable? Single choice, yes, no. In the last step, maybe we can create another one where, again, using conditions, we call the section, why wouldn't you come back? Because then we add the condition if in the question of the previous step about overall satisfaction. For the service, would you come back to us? If the answer was no, then this step will also appear, why wouldn't you come back? And here we put text. Long response, enter a reason. We set it as required. Okay, we have finished our questionnaire. We can move on to the Messages tab and take a moment to see if we like the messages that appear. Automatica. After it has been, for example, completed, the questionnaire will show as completed. Therefore, it is no longer possible to add responses or an error message. If the questionnaire has already been sent, or if there are display limits, we can change it here, and we could also add a custom message which appears based on the score. So if the total score is 5, out of 5, for example 100, then from 5 and above, thank you will appear. You have passed the questionnaire, and we will contact you as soon as possible. In this tutorial, we have somewhat merged questionnaires on empowering new clients and questionnaires of satisfaction. However, let's say we have seen a bit of an overview of all the features that the questionnaire plugin allows. Now we could save and view it simply by clicking on the permalink view. As we can see, our questionnaire will be ready to send to clients with all the questions and answers we have pre-selected. In the form, indeed, that we filled out previously, if we want to try filling it out, we can write, for example, which services were purchased, marketing consultancy, how much time was spent purchasing. As we can see, this is just a numeric field. The number of hours, so 8 hours. Which operator served you? We can put Roberto, so we will see that in the next step, the tab related to Roberto will have opened. What skills do you have? We can say, web hours forward, as we can see. Then, the progress bar starts to turn green. How did you find working with Roberto? Good. A comment on Roberto. Very professional. We can say, in fact, we can see this step appeared because I selected Roberto. If I hadn't selected him and had chosen Andrea instead, I would have gone directly to the next step. How did you find the rating? From 1 to 10, can we say 9? Watch the video. So here it allows you to click and watch the video. And then would you return to us if we click forward? In the end, since we had connected it, if we remember to a contact form, the potential client in this case will be able to enter their details and then click Contact Us. By doing so, we will receive an email with the client's details so that we can contact them again, perhaps via phone number or email. But if we want to receive all the responses that have been given in the form, we need to go inside the contact module. In this case, website form. Click on the contact form that we have linked to the questionnaire, and in the actions, we go down to send request. We click customize email, and in the text editor, we can add the short code that allows, in fact, we find it inside questionnaires in our questionnaire down here. As we can see, it's written, use the short code survey, answers and survey, rating within the form to display the responses. In this case, we can add survey, answer inside the text editor in the form. And then we also add the short code name. Therefore, these are the responses. We write responses, questionnaire, colon, and then client, data, we put the name, surname, email, phone, email. These short codes will be converted with the client's data. We can also include the message, perhaps the name and surname we put together. Okay, we can bold the sections. Great, let's save. And now let's try to fill out the form as well. Luca. If we go back to the questionnaire, we can see that inside responses, we will be able to see the answers that have already been given during the completion. In this case, Luca test, because obviously I filled out a form in the end and it recognized all my answers. Would you come back to us? Yes, clearly the 16th reason was not filled out because I selected yes. If I had selected no, with the conditions, a final step would have appeared asking me for the reason. Let's go see the email we received as a company. As we can see, in fact, we have a new request email received with the questionnaire responses. Here they are with the customer data,